super happy to answer all your questions and discuss with you about these inputs. So let's start with the bad reasons. Why is not enough just to promote XR? Well, first of all, just because of the fact that it's new. A lot of times we jump on technology just for the mere fact that they are cutting edge, which is, of course, could be a good reason, but at the same time, there is also a lot of misconception about what is new. Okay, just because something is new, it doesn't mean that it's worth. It doesn't mean that we really should try to embrace it without any kind of criticism. And actually, XR is a very good example for at least two reasons. First of all, that's that XR is not accessible. Okay, that's a big thing. I mean, a lot of K-12 institutions can not really. I see a okay. Well, for a moment, I saw a main raised. A lot of times there is this huge focus on what is new, but there is a lack of focus on what can really be used by our teachers and by our educators across the country. And XR is getting better. There are right now, especially AR is particularly accessible, but you should always keep an eye on inclusion and access. The other aspect about newness is that a lot of times when something is new, there could be some side effects. And once again, the example of XR is a pretty good one, especially at the beginning when educators were experimenting with XR, thinking that it was like the solution for everything, like a sort of magic wand. They discovered there was a problem with a sort of overstimulation. They realized it was a sort of over cognitive. There was a sort of overload in terms of cognitive stimuli. And believe me, this is what has been called the novelty effect, the wow effect. And they realized that students playing with XR were so immersed in the experience that they tended to forget the content they were supposed to gain. So this is also really related to the engagement and also the immersion. The fact that something is engaging, the fact that specific innovation is going to improve immersion is just not enough. Okay, it doesn't also mean that it's a magic wand that is really going to change your instructional and your teaching practice, especially because you don't know how the students are going to react. And also sometimes engagement or also immersions can having outcomes that are absolutely the opposite of what you really are looking for. Once again, even with virtual worlds, with gaming, and once again with XR, when something is so engaging that is going to to cut your focus or to undermine your focus, well, in that case, of course, you don't want to really use, an innovation and especially XR. But don't worry, there are also good reasons, which, as you can tell, are absolutely the same, right? It's not a mistake. We as educators, we should always focus on what is new. Like, well, I mean, in the previous slide, you were saying the opposite. Well, the fact is that we are usually always late. Education, for a lot of objective reasons, usually comes after, okay? And a lot of times, because there is this enthusiasm or this criticism, we are kind of stuck in between these two extremes. Actually, what we would really try to develop is, a good gray zone, something that we, understanding what are the factors that can really make a difference, the context that can really make a difference, the different variables, the audiences, the learning audiences, the content that can be addressed. All these conditions, all these different kind of parameters are fundamental for really understanding the educational potential of any innovation, and I would say especially XR. Okay, well, because engagement can really improve education, can really improve learning. But what kind of engagement? It could be an individual engagement, it could be a group engagement. How are you delivering engagement? So all these kind of very good questions needs to be addressed, and especially when you're dealing with an innovation that is practically new, and knowing that you don't know. And believe me, there are a lot of technologies that we don't know. I mean, and the more we know, the more we realize we don't know. I remember that even though I was telling you I started at more a sociologist and more media study scholars, and also my origin as an educational technology expert were really focusing more on gaming. But very suddenly I really realized when I was starting to play with XR, he said, oh man, there is a new horizon here. And the more you start to dig, the more you realize you have to dig and dig and dig further. Especially because the role of immersion, for instance, well, that's actually immersing, being able to immerse somebody and a learner in a new environment. It opens, of course, room for a lot of criticism, but also for a lot of opportunities that are not there, especially when we start to think not just about evaluating what is out there, but also we start to evaluate about how can we design and create learning technologies, and especially XR environments, because that's actually, I would say, at the end of the day, our end goal in the educational technology across all the different tools and instruments that you can envision is always related with this trend. We start by be consumers, and then at the end we become developers. And usually the best learning technologies are the ones created and edited and designed by the educators themselves. Okay, so this is also, I would say, always our end goal. So how can we be up to the task? Okay, how can we really understand and start to build that kind of gray zone, that kind of knowledge related to the gray zone, what kind of conditions, factors, etc., parameters? So my first insight, something that really helped me in the last few years, has been to find anchors. At the end of the day, you're not really addressing a technology, right? Because technologies, come and go. There is an ongoing turnover. XR is the same. Like, XR is a pretty new term, right? I mean, in the 90s, we had VR, and was desktop VR, and just the desktop VR, so the one on the flat screen, was already immersive. Well, now we have Oculus Quest. Now we have Oculus Go. So even our definition of immersion is completely different. Think about augmented reality. Augmented reality was there in the 90s, kind of. Now finally we got Pokemon Go, and believe me, Pokemon Go help us out as educators. But the point is that you are not really analyzing a given technology, yes, but you are focusing on a bigger picture. Once again, my take is that if you rely just on being an expert in one technology will change, it will keep improving. So my first, I would say, insight, something I really would like to share with you, focus on anchors. Okay, focus on big construct, big processes that can go across technologies. Okay, because at the end of the day, if you are focused on esports, which is another interest of mine, sports based on video games, well, yeah, now everybody's talking about them, but probably in 5 years they're going to have a completely different shape. Okay, and at the end of the day, you just don't want to be limited by technology itself. Technology is an instrument. Okay, technology is a tool. It's something that can really be revised and rechanged. Okay, so you may say, okay, what kind of anchors are you thinking? Well, this is just a first list that I have addressed in my studies, but these are concepts that are pretty popular. The first one is embodied cognition. So embodied cognition is the idea, and probably you know this better than me, that the more senses, we are experiencing cognition and knowledge through our senses. Okay, so the more I am able to engage with senses, with the user senses, sight, hearing, etc., the better. In essence, we'll be able to provide a kind of different and probably more meaningful cognitive experience to the user, to the learner. Think about XR. Well, if I have an Oculus Go on my head, of course, my immersion, my embodied cognition, the fact that if I move, also my avatar moves. If I use my hands, also my virtual hands move. Well, in that case, it's going to be improved. And there is empirical evidence that, if the embodied cognition is, served and will served by our technology, then the learning outcome is going to be better because, it's going to be able to surround us, our surroundings with, all these kind of different sensorial inputs. Presence is another very interesting anchor. Presence is the feeling of being there. Okay. If you're in a virtual environment, you just start to forget about your body. Okay, and then you really start to act like you are within the mediated environment. And is another very interesting concept that can go across different technologies and that you may want to have. You may want to relate with your XR experience. Situational interest is actually a very interesting concept. It's the idea that, of course, you can engage with your location and with your environment in a meaningful way. And augmented reality, that could be really a great technology if you really want to improve this construct. Is the only technology that can improve this construct? No, you can have QR codes, you can have droids, drones, etc. Different technologies. Still, you have this anchor that is going to guide your activity. Finally, also the sense of belonging. The sense of belonging is another very interesting construct that can really be served by augmented reality applications. The idea, if I move around to my town and I have augmented reality elements and contents in specific locations, well, in that case, of course, the idea is that you can really improve the sense of belonging, the belongingness, the community feeling. Okay, so these are all concepts that go beyond the technology. Now, they are great for XR, for sure. But at the same time, I mean, you can play with kind of different innovations, and in this way, you are not confined with just one technology, but with more. And maybe in 5 years, we are going to have holograms, and in that case, you have to be ready for maybe addressing always the concept of presence, but maybe playing with holograms, like Star Trek. So I want to give you some examples about how I and also with my colleagues here have used these anchors. So the first example is Glare. So Glare is an augmented reality editor that we created for really providing everybody an opportunity to develop their own augmented reality tools. It's very simple. It's just a sort of online form. You just put the coordinates. You upload content, and in the end you're going to have a sort of URL that if you access, well, in that case, according to your location, you're going to provide you're going to get digital content on your phone or on your laptop according to the locations that you have included. It has been created and developed by the May4 augmented reality extended reality tool. What we created this augmented reality tool for talking about the Kent State shootings, one of the most important and tragic events in the recent American history, because of course, I mean, Kent State is as this now it's also a national landmark. It was a great experience. We were able to create this tool in 1 year, but then we soon realized that we wanted to improve, of course, to improve the access to AR. And we use Glare for focusing on history, but we thought, oh, maybe, experts and researchers from other disciplines can really have a different take on augmented reality. And we were able to work with poets, K-12 institutions, and also public health. So we were able to we are creating right now tours focusing on sense of belonging. In this case, we did a study about sense of belonging and augmented reality, and we found out that because of the augmented reality experience, students who were actually not able to be on campus because of COVID were able to keep high their sense of belonging to Kent State and to the town. We also are now working on school belonging, which is a very important construct, and how augmented reality can improve that in K-12. And finally, also we did augmented reality tours about hygiene related to COVID. So in essence, if you're going to enter a building, you have augmented reality kind of content telling you wash your hands, wear the mask, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for us, I mean, the idea was to use augmented reality as a sort of and Glare specifically, just for improving the interdisciplinary scope of augmented reality, which is something I think, especially when you deal with technology, you always bring your background with you, and that's awesome, that's great. But there is so much that other disciplines can do and can provide. It's amazing to see how one take on a given technology like AR. From an educational technology perspective is one thing, but if I give it to a sociologist or to a social worker, here you have a completely different perspective, which is great as well. And together, of course, it's a completely win-win. The other examples I want you to talk about is XR presence. So we did studies about how to improve pre-service teacher training, and we use 360 videos and Oculus Go's for providing this kind of experience, and for me, it was very interesting to see the role of the concept of presence, once again being there. And especially if you're a pre-service teacher who is watching a video, especially an immersive video, you want to be present. You want to be there. What was very interesting is that we realized that the higher the presence, the better the focus. Even just looking at the video recording. So in essence, pre-service teachers who felt more present in the virtual environment were also able to notice more meaningful things, were also to show more empathy. So right now we are in the process of creating 360 videos following these insights, and especially for improving presence. And for us, for me, it was also an opportunity also to create a new instrument that has been validated about measuring XR presence, which in this way we can also understand how much given XR presence can really support presence or not, because it's a constant, it's a measure that we want to be there because it's a positive predictor of the ability of noticing and being situational aware, which is something that as a pre-service teacher educator I want to see. So after these examples, I think another aspect I would like to share with you is to be very proactive. It's completely up to us how we really want to play with XR, and with XR I mean XR written large. You can think about XR as a way to visualize content with your body and to use your body for really accessing the information that you really want to provide in a completely and more immersive way. Just think about how especially augmented reality, but also virtual reality, they give you more different opportunities, I would say more opportunities to represent knowledge, to represent information. We, for instance, we did another study. We used virtual reality, Oculus Quest, with kids, elementary kids, and we focus on exercises about fractions. And we were in a sort of in a room, in a virtual room, and they were like building and sketching fractions, and for them it was a completely very meaningful way to really see and visualize mathematical concepts. And for them, that kind of visualization, it was very clean, very simple, was a sort of game changer. The other prompt that I would like to share with you, and this is probably more related to augmented reality, is think about how location can really interact with the user, and how can you improve location for having an effect, having an impact on the user itself. With user, I mean learner. Okay, think about what things of of a given location you want to improve, you want to augment, and why, and how augmented reality can really augmented reality. You can also say hybrid reality or mixed reality. What kind of these really technologies can really help you out? Third, really think about VR. Think about how VR can really address sort of impossibility. So I tend to see, especially VR, also AR, also XR. Actually, it's pretty general, but I started to think this with VR as a way to address something that is completely impossible, something that cannot be seen or touched, something that is just too risky. VR, I think, is especially meaningful when it can really give you the opportunity to experience something that cannot be experienced in other ways. Could be going back to to the ancient Rome. It could be, say, on a volcano. It could be things that are extremely small or extremely big. But think about VR, and once again VR, even with AR, because if AR, you provide content that is from the past. Here you provide pictures of how that a place that you want to to promote was before things happen. That another way to visualize an impossibility. But it's completely up to you. And the beauty is that right now these technologies are getting more and more accessible, actually. And AR especially, right? Our smartphones are AR devices with a lot of potential. And even Oculus Quest and Gos are becoming way more accessible, especially in comparison with the past. But I also want to give you more specific insights, okay? But really, let's talk about research, right? So all these inputs are awesome, but a little bit abstract. Yes, you're right. So there are things that I think deserve to be explored more. And then here, these three examples are just few from I think a very long list. But the first of all is that what we don't know, we don't know a lot of things. I was telling you this before, but I think we don't know about knowledge transfer processes in XR environments. So in essence, if I'm doing something, I learn something in XR, I'm going to be able to, just go back and replicate. Yes, there are a few studies, but not as many as we need. That's a first problem. The second is we are lacking of longitudinal analysis. So we don't know the long-term impact on XR. A lot of the studies are cross-sectionals, so which is a kind of sort of one time. So we need more efforts in that. And finally, we don't know really so much about content creation from the students. So usually, at least we talk about educators, but what about having students going around creating their own experiences? And as you know, this is something that is very typical in educational technology. Once again, we start as consumers, then educators become developers, and then we see how students interact, and become, editors, creators, developers, producers by themselves. In XR, we don't have so much of that either. So these are our three problems that, I hope will be helpful if you're like, okay, what can we do? But these are like good examples. But once again, it's a very long list. And having said that, I want to thank you all. I think my 30 minutes are just passed, but I'm so excited to see your questions or your reflections or your inputs about what I just said. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Gandolfi. Round of applause. I know it's hard to get applause in a virtual setting. Thank you. Well, now we want to open it up to Q&A. If you want